So David Stedman here. We're going to talk about Azure B2B with Microsoft Identity Manager 2016 Service Pack 1. And what we're going to talk about is giving cloud users access to on-prem AD integrated web applications. Interesting. So what is the scenario we want to cover around B2B and Azure? So the main scenario is customers have web apps which assume AD integrated authentication. Users sync from on-prem AD can access those apps. So users that are on-prem, that are synced up to AAD, they can access those apps today using Azure AD App Proxy. Users that cannot do that, so users that are not in on-prem AD, such as cloud guest accounts, or maybe even cloud-only accounts, cannot have access to those applications, which causes sometimes issues around, do I give them an on-prem account? And if I give them an on-prem account, how are we going to limit that from actually showing up in Azure Active Directory, have a conflict, all that good stuff. And then users that need on-prem access will need an on-prem account. So that will always be there. So we're not going to be able to change that anytime soon. So the second bullet point, we still create an on-prem account, but we create it in a manner where the user cannot gain access to the account. It's only used for Kerberos constrained delegation. So the object has to be there, has to be found. That way Azure App Proxy can delegate or impersonate that user account that is on-prem. So with that said, today we are announcing preview for the Microsoft Graph Management Agent. This is a extensible ECMA2 connector, just like our generic LDAP, generic SQL. This connector allows you to talk to the MIM, to the Azure Graph API endpoint, and that endpoint is V1 or beta. Now, one thing to note, beta is not meant for production. So if you're using a beta endpoint, the understanding is beta is always in development. It could change. So don't plan on any beta in production. I would recommend using beta if you're testing out a new scenario, testing out something new for your hybrid standpoint. So beta is definitely not the way to go. So V1 is what we're going to be using. From here you see you have the the option to select attribute types. The two main attribute types is users and groups. We have not enabled this for any other object types at the moment. In this scenario, it's B2B, so users and groups. From there, you can select attributes. Again, you have the full list that is available within Azure. And this MA will refresh, so if there's new attributes added at a later time that you want to take advantage of that are available in the Graph API, you would see those selected here when you do a refresh of the schema. And also any new additional object types that we enable, if you install a fix or an update, we would also be able to detect those if we've enabled that scenario for the Azure Graph component. So what are the two delivery options around B2B when we talk B2B to on-prem? So the first thing is what we just discussed for customers who use MIM and use MIM to manage the lifecycle for creating user accounts in AD or any type of group-related activities. MIM Management Agent or the Graph MA allows you to read the Azure AD via the Graph API for users and groups, and customers then can use this within MIM to auto-create AD accounts for guests as needed, delete them when no longer needed using object deletion rules, and also any other group-related activities that might come about for the hybrid scenario that is not filled in with AAD Connect. So again, this does not replace AAD Connect. AAD Connect is the bridge from on-prem to cloud. That is the main mechanism. We do not recommend use this for what AAD Connect is providing. So again, this is just filling in the hybrid gap that we've heard from customers, that I want to do this when an account shows up. I want to do this when an account is part of this group or that group. I want to kick off a workflow because of this user is in this group, or it showed up in Azure, or whatever the case may be. This management agent is for filling in the hybrid scenarios, and specifically the B2B to on-prem scenario for customers. For customers that do not have MIM, we have an option here, a script that a customer can run, which would create the account in Azure Active Directory, or in Active Directory, I apologize. And then the account in AD looks just like the MIM approach. So again, closely related, but again, you have two options. The first option is if you already have a full lifecycle management capability using MIM. Definitely recommend using this connector to provide or fill in that hybrid gap between B2B to on-prem for app access. For customers that are smaller and they don't want to deploy MIM, or there's a confidence level that is not there yet, you can go ahead and use the script that's available. Again, you'll have to download the script, modify the script. Again, the script is only for it's a demo script, but you will have to customize it for your need. Again, sample script available. So what does this mean when we grant B2B user access? So in this diagram, you can see that we have a Contoso tenant, and then we have a Fabricam tenant. Again, if you are familiar with B2B, the Contoso tenant can invite a user from Fabricam tenant. Once that invite has been sent, an object is created within the Contoso Azure AD tenant. Again, like we said, the two options here, we have the MIM graph connector, and then we have the B2B script. Once it's read in, the MIM sync engine can create that account in Active Directory, or a script could create that account. Again, on your choice, either use MIM for your complete lifecycle management, or you can use a script depending on the size, complexity, whatever the case. Again, those are two options available for you. Once that object is created in Active Directory, again, the user can log in, as we see number 5. From there, it goes through app proxy. App proxy looks at the app, then does a KCD or Kerberos constrained delegation, and that is allowing that user access to that app. So that is a full end-to-end around that. Experience giving via app proxy. So some of the experience. Ensure cloud users will have an AD account. So what is the target? An IAM specialist or AD admin. They can either configure MIM if they have MIM, or install the script on a domain join machine. Again, in the zip file, you'll see the sample script, and you'll also see the README that goes a step-by-step on how to install the script on a domain join machine. And then from there, give cloud users on-prem access. Again, it's no different today than giving access to your already users that are on-prem. This would be the app owner, and then you would install app proxy, target the actual application, and add the cloud-only user to the authorized for the app use. The user account is then automatically created in AD, whether it's MIM or the script. Then the guest uses this app. That is the end user, so the end user is now ready. He logs in as guest at fabricam.com. He sees the app that is listed in the access panel, and then he can actually run that app without knowing the on-prem password. So that is the experience from end to end. What target areas, so your IAM specialist or your AD admin, and then also your app owner, giving them access. Now you could theoretically set up a dynamic group, and we'll go and show you how that's done. So that is the quick down and dirty for the PowerPoint. But what I want to go through now, and let me go ahead and close all my windows here. So if you look out on our docs.microsoft, you will see the scenario support. So Azure AD Business B2B collaboration. This is a full setup of configuration from the sync engine to the sync rules. Again, this could differ depending on the complexity of your environment. In the environment that we done this in, we only had 3 connectors. This was a brand new out-of-the-box setup, nothing too complex. We try to keep it simple as possible. That is the B2B scenario, and you can get there by going to docs.microsoft, Microsoft Identity Manager. On the left-hand side, you'll see Graph, and then from there, you'll see Microsoft Identity Management, Microsoft Graph. Again, this will cover how to install the connector, what's required from a Graph API, and then also what's available, what the attributes mean, what are some of the limitations. Again, installing the connector, V1, some of the date time items, and then also troubleshooting, which is a huge important thing, is when something goes wrong, how do I turn on logging? That's available there as well. And then also the actual scenario supported guide, which is the B2B end-to-end deployment. Now, once we document some other different end-to-end deployments, you'll see those appear here as well. So that is the documentation. It's available, it's alive, and you can grab that today. For downloading the connector, again, it's just like downloading all the other generic connectors that we have out there. You can download the latest. And here you'll see we have the Graph connector. So here's the Graph connector MSI. And then we have the B2B zip file, which allows you to pull in those guest users and then also create those in Active Directory, and that includes the README file as well. So here, what does it look like? So let's go ahead and go through that. So the first step is when you're setting up the B2B, there's 2 things that need to occur on the domain. One, you need to update the UPN suffixes for your actual tenant, because App Proxy uses the UPN for impersonation lookup. Again, that could change in the future where you could use some of the other custom items like SAM account lookup or whatever the case may be, there's another attribute that can be stamped on the object, which says it's the local UPN. Again, that's not available today. We're hoping that will come about, but again, this video is just for what we have today. So as of today, you will need to add MIM 2016 SP1 on Microsoft.com in the UPN under Active Directory Domains and Trust, and then you'd add that UPN there. The next step is creating your OUs. So in this case, we have the script running as an example, but also we have just for MIM. So B2B guest is where MIM is going to place. This OU needs to be excluded from your AAD Connect OU selection. So just make sure you go and once you start planning this, make sure you go modify AAD Connect for that setup. So once we done that, we will go to our sync engine, and we'll go ahead and let's go ahead and clear this out. I did some items here. So in this we have 3 different management agents, and we'll go through those. So the Graph connector, we'll go through the setup here. Again, all this is documented on the site. If there is something missing, by all means let me know. I'll go ahead and add it, but for the most part, I think we've captured everything needed. Connectivity, again, like we see V1, beta, and then from there, the actual tenant name, and then client ID, and then the client secret. This client secret is generated at the time of the generation of the app for the secret key. That's documented as well. You cannot get this key back. So once you generate it, if you have to, you might have to go regenerate it again. Again, just something to be aware of. Next item is global parameters. Again, this is the date time format. This is the HTTP timeout. So if you do have latency within your network, this is a setting that might be useful as well. Provisioning, we're not doing anything crazy for provisioning hierarchy. Partitions and hierarchy by default, we're just going to use the default. Object types, as you can see here, we have group and users. Attributes, again, we have a full list of attributes. We're only selecting a few that is needed just for the user account in general. Anchors, we have ID. Connector filter, again, by default, we have declared a connector filter here, but what you'll see in the sync rules coming up is we've done the same thing here. So this really is not required because we have this already on the sync rule. Join and projection, we don't have any join projection. That's all handled by the sync rule. But again, if you decided you wanted to use legacy versus declarative, you could go ahead and do that here as well. Again, attribute flow, we could define it here, but it's defined in our sync rule, and we'll go through that. Deprovisioning, we're just going to make them disconnectors. Typically, by default, we would determine what we want to do based on the MIM configuration. In this configuration, all the deletes are going to occur from when the B2B graph removes the user. For instance, when we invite the user, we delete the user. That's all going to be initiated from the actual Azure graph or Azure AD. So we're going to make them disconnectors, and I'll go ahead and show you the actual deletion rule. So no rule extension. Again, rule extensions if you want to format different things using a DLL or code. The MIM-MA, again, this MA is a little bit different than the rest of the MAs. You do have to select the attributes, and then also you do have to select the attribute flow. So it's a little different than the rest of the other MAs, and that's just the way it is. So in this case, we have object SID, account name, display name, mail, domain. These are just the minimal type of attributes in order to get the object into the portal. This scenario is going to cover a guest user giving access to MIM portal. And again, it doesn't have to be MIM portal, but in this case, because MIM is a AD integrated app, it just seemed a lot easier than standing up some other sample app. For deprovisioning, we're going to stage a delete on the object next export run. Again, what that means is once the object is deleted in the metaverse, it will go ahead and delete the object in the actual MIM service database or service in portal for most folks that understand that. So that's that connector. For Active Directory, let's go ahead and open that guy up. We have our directory. We have our provisioning, again, Contoso, Contoso. And then from there we have provisioning, that's leave it default. We have containers, domain, organizational unit, and users. So that's all we have right there. Again, minimum amount of attributes. We don't need to be too crazy. And those attributes are defined in the actual documentation. Again, user count control, SN, connector filter. We don't have any connector filter. Join and projection, we don't have any. That's all handled by the sync rule. Attribute flow, just like we talked about earlier, handled by sync rules. Configure deprovisioning. Again, stage delete on the object next export run. So again, delete it from the metaverse is going to delete it in Active Directory. And what controls that? What controls what's going to be deleted in the actual metaverse? So we're going to go to Metaverse Designer, and then we're going to go to Object Types here. We're going to see our user or person object, and here we're going to see the object deletion. So that is configured here, configure object deletion. And what this is saying, delete the metaverse object when the connector from any of the following management agent is disconnected. And right now we have selected if the user object is deleted from scope from the B2B graph, go ahead and delete it from the metaverse. Again, this could be different depending on your environment, so be very wary of just changing it to match mine. Make sure you understand what is currently there and what is the impact when you add this connector in. So that's something to think about. So let's go ahead and look at the sync rule. So here we have all our connections. So let's go ahead and look what the sync rule looks like. So we're going to open up the portal, and then we're going to go to synchronization rules. And here we have 3 sync rules: in B2B AD, in B2B guest, and then out to B2B the AD. So if we look at the external system, this is graph. So this would be in from the Graph API. So let's start from there first because that's most logical. So we're going to go in this order. So this is going to import the user to the metaverse. So we're going to do it's inbound, and then it's a scoping filter. So we're not going to do anything crazy. So inbound to resources of this type on outbound synchronization policy. We're going to scope this person, B2B, user. Again, outbound, there is no outbound. Relationship, UID, inbound flow. So we're going to do display name, account name, so left ID, which will be the account name, ID to UID, user account type, employee type, given name, surname, again, bare minimum as we need it. So that is going to be a inbound. And if we look at our inbound, there we go. So that's going to bring that user in. Let's go ahead and look at, so now it's going to come from Graph to the metaverse. The next thing that we need to do is create that in Active Directory. So we're going to go out to B2B in AD. So let's go out. Scope is outbound to all metaverse resources according to this outbound scoping filter. So what that means is every user based on this scoping filter is going to be created. So let's look at the scope. So person, this is the external system, which is the Active Directory, the user, and then the scoping filter. So this scoping filter is an inclusion filter, not an exclusion filter. So it's going to look at all those objects and say, if employee type equals guest, I'm going to go ahead and apply this scoping filter. So inclusion filter. Then we're going to look at the relationship. Relationship is default when creation. From here, we're going to do account name to SAM account name, given name to given name, male, SN. User principal name, the user principal name. Again, pretty simplistic. Here, initial flow only. We're going to pass the DN. The DN is CN equals UID, OU equals B2B guest. Remember, we've seen that earlier. That will be the DN. Again, this will be initial flow only. We're going to flow a random password. Again, we're just using the out-of-the-box random password. Some folks have the mim wall, or they have some other custom activity that could generate a password for you. Again, this is just needed because an enable count needs a password. The next item is the user count control, 262.656. Again, this is specific to the user account on what features are required. In this case, this is an enabled account, and it requires a smart card to log in. And again, we're not issuing smart cards to our B2B guest, so he would not be able to log on to on-prem, even though this account was enabled. So we're going to go ahead and hit cancel. Those are all the sync rules related to this B2B to Active Directory. So now let's go ahead and test this out so we can take a look at if this works. So let's go ahead and open up a browser here. We're going to open this up. And we're going to go ahead and invite myself. So let's go ahead and say new guest user. Go ahead and invite myself. Okay, there I am. I'm going to go ahead and invite myself. Inviting. We'll wait a few minutes here. It does take a few seconds to get the email. Again, I invited myself. The next step that would happen, I would receive an email, and that email I need to click on. Again, there's ways around having the user to have to initiate the actual activation. But in this case, for simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and get the email, and I'm going to click the accept button. So I received the email, and just to show you, let me go ahead and open that up. So here's the default email. Hello, welcome. Going to go ahead and say get started. And while that's getting started, now we can go ahead and go through our sync process. Again, we're going to do this manually, but once you get this set up, you could do it automatic for automatic. So first, we're going to go ahead and do a Delta import, Delta sync. Initially, you're going to need to do a full import, full sync, and then from there on, you're going to have to do a Delta import, Delta sync, which reduces a lot of time. Actually, it looks like it wants me to do a full import, full sync. That's fine. I only have a few there. So let's go ahead and look at that. While that's running. As you can see, we have our ad. This should be my account. Again, bringing it in. So there I am. Excellent. Then from here, we're going to go to projection. Again, projection is projecting it into the metaverse. And then from there, it's going to apply the sync rules. So we have two sync rules being applied. One is the MIMMA, and the other one is Active Directory. The next step is, because we know in order to log into the portal, we need the object SID and the account name and domain name. So instead of exporting to the MIMMA or the MIM service, I'd rather export to Active Directory and then import and then do one export out to the MIMMA. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead and export out to Active Directory. So run. We're going to go ahead and do a export. So here's the export, and we are done. So export out to Active Directory. We brought the object back in, and here we should have an export flow out to the MIMMA. So let's go ahead and do our export out to our SharePoint portal. So we're going to go ahead and do an export. And once that is done, there we go. And then we're going to go ahead and do a Delta confirming import. This is just confirming that the export occurred, and then it will clear that hologram from the actual export itself. So now let's go back to our MIM service and see if we see a user there. So let's go there. Let's go to users. And we'll just do a quick search here. And there I am. So now, okay, we have a user. We have everything set up. So now let's see if it actually worked. So we are going to go to our portal. If we look at our portal, and let me grab that from the screen here. We have our invitation. We're going to hit next. It is getting everything ready. And this should dump me right to the Access Panel application directly into my Contoso MIM. And as you can see, I've already got MIM B2B. So this is my MIM portal published via app proxy and using Kerberos constrained delegation. So as a external user, B2B, now I can gain access into the portal and do admin functions. This would be a great concept around, for instance, if you have a outsourced help desk and maybe all they need to do is do their work in a portal, but they don't need Active Directory access. Again, all that's driven by a web front end for logging and making sure they can only do a finely scoped type of thing like updating attributes or creating users or whatever the case may be. So here we go. We are logging into MIM B2B, and there we have it. We are logged in to MIM that is on-prem using a guest account, and now I act and feel just like a user that is on-prem using Kerberos constrained delegation. Again, this is a nice video on B2B guest access for on-prem access for applications that is Windows Integrated Authentication. I thank you, and I will look forward to my next post around what else or what other opportunities this new connector gives this hybrid MIM world that we live in today. Thank you.